I guess what they refer to as high intensity training principles. This is what I've been teaching. I've been popularizing it relatively successfully over the last year. It seems to be controversial in the fitness industry, and we'll kind of have you expand on that. So high intensity training principles, as we can agree, they're just evidence-based, physiology-based training principles. Based on the evidence, it doesn't seem that more volume provides better results. Based on the evidence, it doesn't seem that lifting quickly or explosively improves speed. So you employed high intensity training principles in the NFL and the NCAA. What got you into that? When did you, I'm sure you kind of started teaching traditional, not necessarily correct, strength and conditioning protocols. Where did that shift happen? Where did you shift to high intensity training principles, and why?
I think there is controversy in the industry. I don't think there's controversy when it comes to evidence-based practices and practitioners. If you follow the science, there's really no controversy. But where I made my drastic change is I was very much into the powerlifting, weightlifting types of programs that were espoused by the National Strength and Conditioning Association when I first started my career. And when I got a graduate assistantship at Ohio State, I was fortunate to go to many conferences and clinics at that time, being in Ohio. Mike Idelson was a evidence-based practitioner at the University of Michigan, was there for 27 very successful years. And south of Columbus, Kim Wood, very successful and strength coach for the Cincinnati Bengals for many years. It really turned things around for me. And I think the biggest thing was when I was a traditionally based practitioner, I had injuries. I had injuries in the weight room as a result of the training that I was prescribing. I was hurting kids, and I was rationalizing that I was helping them. And that, more than anything, seeing kids actually get hurt from what I was teaching them to do, that's what really started to broaden my perspective on maybe there's other ways of doing this.
I calculated I supervised about 20 to 25,000 sessions. I was doing about 50 to 70 a week for 7 years. I haven't had one. Has there ever been an athlete that got hurt in the weight room under your principles, under your instruction?
No, in fact, my primary job as a strength coach, a strength conditioning professional, is to, when I was in the NFL, was to protect my players from the rigors of sport. Not add to the rigors, but to protect them from the rigors of sport. And so I take a lot of pride in the fact that when I was in the NFL, the teams I was associated with were always in the top 10 least injured teams in the league. What we were doing in the weight room wasn't endangering them. It was, in fact, enhancing their health. I think that's one of the biggest problems right now. You mentioned explosive and ballistic type movements. When you do those movements that are associated with speed, you are creating internal shearing forces within the joint capsules that over time, those are accumulated minor injuries. Acutely, you may not see something, but over years, those tendons and ligaments, the shearing forces that are on them as a result of lifting very heavy or lifting very fast, is going to eventually show up. And it's usually going to show up in the field. So an athlete is injured on the field, but the initial insult of the damage that was caused was a result of the training in the weight room. And it's that causal link that coaches really have a hard time seeing. They say, well, the injury happened in the field. It didn't. It started in the weight room. There isn't a direct link between strength and performance. It's assumed. But what's not assumed is I know that if I get their joint capsules stronger through strength training, if I get their muscles stronger, their bones thicker, their tendons thicker and stronger, I can definitely say that they are at a less chance of injury when they play the game.
Choosing these movements that resemble movement patterns in sports with the assumption that the skill in that exercise will transfer to that sport activity. Is there any literature that shows that this is a true phenomenon?
No. Again, it's kind of part of the fitness and sport lore. When I was with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I had a salesman come in my weight room, and he was trying to sell me heavy footballs. Byron throws this heavy football through the off season. Not only are we training his throwing muscles, but we're also improving his skill set all at the same time. If you think with a logical mind that if you throw a heavier ball, you're going to have to adjust your throwing mechanics because of the weight of the ball. And just the fact that in adjusting those mechanics, even if it's a little bit, you are now teaching the central nervous system a completely different skill. And in fact, if research shows anything, it shows that if you do try to simulate a movement like with a heavy football, you will in fact screw that athlete up more than help them. It's the principle of specificity. It's not the principle of similarity. Principle of specificity clearly states that from your motor cortex down through your central nervous system and out into your musculature, there is one and only one neuromuscular motor pathway to do any specific skill. And if you deviate off that neuromuscular pathway, you are doing a different skill. Brent Rushaw, he's a professor emeritus right now at San Diego State University, but first started in Australia and has published numerous books. And one thing I always talk about when I talk to coaches at clinics, he said he spent the majority of his career dispelling this. And this is the top motor learning guy in the world. Just couldn't believe, some of the things, and, talking about how strength coaches believe that the power clean would positively transfer onto a football field as far as running faster or jumping higher or hitting harder.
I was looking at from the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Journal, and they showed no correlation to Olympic lifts increasing the speed of athletes. And it's right here, but it will never die.
And that's what these football coaches did. They went to Venice Beach. And if a guy had a certain look, or he benched a certain amount of weight, or he cleaned a certain amount of weight, that alone gave him professional credibility. So who did they hire? The first experts in our country were bodybuilders, powerlifters, and Olympic weightlifters. So today, 50 years later, it doesn't surprise me that in mainstream strength training, you see bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting, and powerlifting protocols as the main party line way of strength training. I had an assistant that did a survey one time on where do you get your information, and he surveyed all the professional and collegiate strength coaches, and rather than scientific journals, they got most of their information from other strength coaches. That winning games is keeping your first string players on the field. If your first string players are on the bench, those positions are going to be exploited and you're going to lose. And then I would try to educate them to the fact that by introducing the strength stimulus the way that they're currently introducing that stimulus, in fact, you are cumulatively over time damaging tendons, ligaments, and you're by creating that damage in the weight room, they are more vulnerable to injury out in the field.